Hello, thank you very much for coming to this session about Asciidoctor and documentation. Obviously, I'm not Dan Allen. I mean, he has hair and beard, and obviously I don't have any of this. Sadly, he couldn't arrive at time to give the talk, so I'm the backup guy. And I'm Alex Soto. I work in Red Hat, and I've been a contributor of Asciidoctor. I've been in the community since the beginning. And my Twitter is AlexSotoB, which I think is the best way to contact me, because if you send me an email, it will take for me like 2 weeks to answer it. So if you send me a Twitter, then I can answer any question you have really quickly. So everyone knows what Asciidoctor is. Who don't know what is Asciidoctor? You don't know what it is? Okay. Asciidoctor is a tool chain for parsing and converting AsciiDoc documents so they can be published in a variety of formats like HTML, PDF, or for example, EPUB, or even these slides. These slides are produced by Asciidoctor. And now, if you don't know it, you can think about like Markdown, but a complete solution that you can write anything you have in your mind, like documentation for your projects, but books, for example, my book, I wrote Testing Java Microservices with Andy, that's here. For Manning, we wrote it with AsciiDoc and Asciidoctor. So now, I think that this summarizes a lot what Asciidoctor is that the more I work with Asciidoctor, the more I love writing documentation. Very nice when the default output is gorgeous. I mean that one of the key points of AsciiDoc and Asciidoctor is that we are trying that you enjoy writing documentation, but also the default output, it's like, okay, I can take the default output and put it for all my customers without any problem of having to deal with style sheets and so on and so forth. So, the logo. I mean, Asciidoctor started at 2012, and we still don't have a logo. In fact, notice that the issue was opened on 31st of December. So it's a good day to open an issue of 2012. Yeah, and there was like 2,062 comments. So you can imagine that there was a lot of feedback and a lot of tries and and logos and so on and so far, but finally we get it. And this is the logo. Yeah, this logo was created by Marian Lavak, and as you can see, it's an A that obviously is for Asciidoctor, and then you have this equal because if you know any of the document written by AsciiDoc, it starts with the equal sign. And wait, sorry. Right. And then the both versions with a strong background or with white one. So finally, we close the issue about the logo. And now anything related with logos, we will open another issue. But of course, this is the logo, but we introduced a lot of changes in the latest versions regarding the processor. The first thing is that everything that I'm going to talk here, it's nothing specific to Asciidoctor. It's about the AsciiDoc format. I mean that Asciidoctor is the processor and AsciiDoc is the format. So everything that I'm going to cover here is just using the AsciiDoc format, because Asciidoctor has some kind of extensions that we implemented things that are missed on the AsciiDoc format. The first thing that we're going to see is the Xriver style, which it's used for doing references between a paragraph and a section. And this is how you can refer from a paragraph another section, which is just say refer to, and you do this // and then with the reader, and you put there the ID, and ID is just the title of the section that you want to refer. And notice that this foreign keys by default ID is foreign keys with the menus in the middle and all in lowercase. And Now, when you do this, you will get something like this. You just configure Xref style :full in the top of your document, and then you have something like refer to section 3.1, which is foreign keys. Of course, you can use Xref style short, and then you just remove the title of the section. This is something that is new. Before, you always get it, the title in the reference output. And now you can choose to just the title without setting the Xref style, or the full version, or the short version. This is something that is new. Also, regarding translations, the community is just awesome. They provided us like 28 translations of the labels that are static from AsciiDoc and Asciidoctor. We'll see an example, but basically we are this. I don't know if all of them, but notice that it's really funny that there is, for example, Japanese, Chinese, which are quite. I mean that there is community on there that provide us a translation for this. There is also Catalan, Dutch, Poland, Spanish, Romanian. Yeah. Oh, I mean that there is translations. And basically these translations are done with this way. You create a file, which this file is in, you need to send a pull request to data locale attributes menus, and then you put the line there, .adoc, and then it's something like this. You said, when there is an appendix caption, in this case, this example of French, is appendix. When you have caution caption is advertisement, and so on and so forth. So you just need to provide the default labels that that you want to be replaced at generation time by AsciiDoc. Also, we've improved the advanced the tag filtering when you want to include something. This is an example, right? This is a class, and probably what you want to do in your document is do something like, look, this is an example of how to, in this case, create a request scope bin. This is a CDI bin. And notice that you put tag name, and then you put some imports, then tag name, you put another content, like the name of the bin, and then end name. Before in the last release, you could set, I want my file to contain everything that it's between name. So your output in the HTML would be something like import JavaX inject name, and then name X. That's all what you get in the output. But you couldn't do anything else. And currently, we improve this. So for example, you can exclude all tags. So if you put include the bin called x.java and between brackets as a configuration say tags, nothing, you get all the file without, excluding all the tags from the source file. Also, you can exclude by name. So you can say everything that it's between name, just take it out. So in this case, you see that there is no name and there is no import. But also you can say something like include everything. And that's a really interesting example, because when you said include everything, it means that get all the tags and put all the content. But notice that if you do this with the previous version of Asciidoctor, you get the comments, the // tag, : name, you get it there on the output. But now, Asciidoctor is smart enough to say, okay, I know that these are comments, and these comments are something that if you said that you want to put everything, you don't want to put on your output. So it removes these comments. This is something that also comes in the last version. Also, we are giving StrongerSBG support. Basically, we are including that you can set these files as an image, as an object, or as an embedded. So you can put something like image, diagram, ops, interactive. And this means that it's going to create the output as an HTML with an object type SVG XML with the data. Of course, if you change this to inline, what it does, Asciidoctor, is read the file and put the output as an embedded content inside the HTML tags. But since we improved this support of files, we even integrated better with diagrams. I mean that diagrams processor are like processors to create diagrams from ASCII text, right? And in this case, is an example of Plantum UML, which is one, but Asciidoctor supports a lot of these tools. So you can do a blog, which is Plantum UML, which says the content of this blog is going to be a Plantum UML format, and the output is going to be a SFG file with inline. So what's happening if I generate this? It's like, yeah, it's an if-else activity diagram. What you're going to generate is this, the output. So an inline diagram with really fashion look and really easy to work with. Of course, from latest, like that, in this new version we fixed a lot of bugs, and basically the community started working a lot because that Asciidoctor it's starting to be used everywhere. We're going to see some examples, but they start providing a lot of bug fixes. So there are like 120 bug fixes for the next release, so that's better for all of us. And one thing that we created that is new is the Asciidoctor Bespoke. Bespoke is like Rebel.js for creating slides in HTML way, like this one. But yeah, but the engine, instead of being Rebel, is Bespoke, which is another one that it contains, in our opinion, a clean API to work with. So how to use Asciidoctor Bespoke? Well, you just create an AsciiDoc document. Notice that the first thing is the title of the document, and in this case is the first slide. And then for each subsection, which is the two equal symbols, it's a new slide. So you do this, and then when you render this with Asciidoctor Bespoke, then you get a slide similar to the one I'm using. And one other thing that it's really good is we create some kind of metadata for Bespoke, so you can create some kind of, in this case, remark, a slice feed. This is a metadata, and then from your Bespoke files, you can set remark means this change in the CSS output or in the HTML output, or inserting something in the CSS file. And a slice means this, and feed means this. So with just putting this thing on top of a section title, you can get something like this. It's just, it's like this metadata properties for modifying the output, which is great. This is something also new for Asciidoctor. As performance, it has been something that we have always taken care. And one of the questions that we get is why it's implemented in Ruby, because we know that Ruby is not the fastest language to be used. But in 2012, GitHub started to create a project that then was called Asciidoctor, where they wanted to render simple AsciiDoc documents. They rely on AsciiDoc.py, which is Python, which was the Python implementation, and they rely on this. But they give us some problem with security, with performance, and so on and so forth. So they started a Ruby implementation. And then Dan Allen was investigating some of these markup languages, and they see that GitHub was doing this, so they start really hard pushing on the implementation for Ruby. So this is why it's in Ruby, because GitHub started in Ruby. The good thing is that GitHub loves AsciiDoc, so they always provide support for the latest AsciiDoc and Asciidoctor engine. And for like 2013, more than 5 million repositories can use AsciiDoc for writing their own documentation. One thing For a previous version to this one, we improved the speed by 35%. And from AsciiDoc Python to Asciidoctor with Ruby, we speed up 100 times the performance. And I know that you might think that this is not, that's so important for documentation, but for example, Dan is working with a company which they rendered 5,000 AsciiDoc documents, and previously they did with the Python implementation, and it took almost 1 day to generate the documentation. So of course, yeah, if you want to render one small file, then it's okay. But if you are doing taking or giving a lot of importance on your documentation, then it's important the performance. And thanks of Asciidoctor now, they are rendering with just 5 minutes. So they pass from 1 day to 5 minutes, which is great. Then the ecosystem is growing. There is always new improvements. For example, currently one of the best improvements is like the Docker image, which we are working to that so that it can be lighter. But of course, improving the ecosystem means more and more downloads. And you can see that this summer we arrived like the 2.5 million downloads. And notice that it's exponentially. Every month there is more and more and more people moving from I don't know what to AsciiDoc. And just you can see that what I mentioned, that all the ecosystem, the JavaScript, the Java, and the Gem, which is the Ruby implementation, it's improving year by year and improving these downloads. So we mentioned one of the most used Asciidoctor ecosystem project is Asciidoctor J. Asciidoctor J brings Asciidoctor to the JVM, and it's a pure Java API that manages JRuby underneath and wraps all the Ruby API so you can use the Asciidoctor Gem without giving any thought. And this project started by me, so 3 years ago, and I based on some proof of concepts that Andres Almiray and Jason Porter did in the past, and then I just took this proof of concepts and let's say that I put it like a product. Let's say I put the product as this. Nowadays I'm not in the heat of Asciidoctor J because there is Robert Panzer which is doing an awesome job doing things. Really awesome. So when you start working with Asciidoctor J, you don't have the feeling that there is Ruby behind. This is the ecosystem. This is Asciidoctor J, but then there is the N plugin, so you can use N for generating documentation. There is a Gradle plugin, IntelliJ plugin, Limpap converter, Javadoc Doglet, a Maven plugin. And this is a Ruby extension. So in this case, what you're doing is that I create my own custom macro, which is when I found issue colon 48, I just read the URI issues attribute, and then I substitute the ID with this URL. This is with Ruby, and this is how you can do it the same with Asciidoctor J DSL. Notice that this is a Groovy DSL where you said Asciidoctor extensions, and then you define the extension just there on place. So you don't need to create Ruby files or Java files. Of course, you can write extensions with Java and then register it as Java SPI, but in this way you have everything in place. Asciidoctor GS was a project that was started by Guillaume Grossit, and basically what this project is doing is transpelling Ruby code from Opal to JavaScript. Opal is like this. It changed all the Ruby code to JavaScript code. And one of the new features is on the Asciidoctor GS is that now in the past, Asciidoctor GS was not 100% future compatible, and now it's 100% compatible. So everything that you have in Asciidoctor Ruby core, you also have it in the JavaScript. And again, the Asciidoctor GS allows us to have an atom package, a brackets extension BigBook also uses for rendering the books, DocGist, AsciiDoc FX, and also there is plugins for Chrome and Firefox to preview the AsciiDoc documents from the browser directly. This is the same extension that you saw before with Java, and this is how it looks with JavaScript. So you can write extensions with JavaScript directly. And this is an important improvement as well, thanks of Asciidoctor GS. This is the Atom previewer and the syntax highlighter and everything. And this has been a really improvement. I think that if you want to write AsciiDoc documents, you should use Atom with the AsciiDoc plugin, because it's, in our opinion, it's the best one, which takes better all the syntax highlighting and the output. Of course, there is some improvements, like for example, the performance of generating the preview. But there are improvements. We are working on this, but this is something interesting to take a look as well. So the adoption: which companies are using this or move to Asciidoctor in the last 6 months? The first one is Fedora. Fedora decided to move all the documentation from DocBook, XML. Who likes XML, to AsciiDoc. Also Red Hat, a lot of products in Red Hat their documentation is in AsciiDoc, like Hiberate or Archelion or Forge. They're using AsciiDoc. Java EE 7 started with CDI and Bean Validations to be using AsciiDoc, and now the Java EE 8 is moving all the tutorials and everything to AsciiDoc. Spring Boot, when you go to the Spring page, and you know that you can go to starting guides, and then you see the examples, and you can download or clone the project on your GitHub repo. Then also all these things are done with Asciidoctor and Asciidoctor J. Bogella that has a really interesting tutorials. They are all of them writing in AsciiDoc. Kronos too, and also the GHipster minibook is writing with AsciiDoc and rendered with Asciidoctor. So what to expect in the future? Phase 1 is the semantic version. Just check that we release one version every 6 months. Basically is when we can, and this is something that is not so good in terms of bug fixes. So what we want to do in the future is just using semantic version, so we can release when there is some bug fixes, then we release a minor version. Some bug fixes we release a minor version, instead of releasing like big chunks of features every 6 months. Also, we're going to work hard on having semantic HTML. In the beginning, the project takes the AsciiDoc Python output as a reference. So everything was or is in HTML4. So what we want to do is move the default output to HTML5 so we can use the semantic tags, and this means that you will be able to customize the output easily or more easy. In fact, we started working with this. Jakub Rutka started creating a template with HTML5, so we need just to improve this and merge this to the upstream. Also, the validation. This is something that always all people ask us, that, hey, I run the AsciiDoc, there are some failures like an include that it's not found, but the build never, the Asciidoctor never fails, so the build never fails. And what we are starting working is with TextLink. That TextLink is a tool where you define your grammar with some examples and so on and so forth, and then you try to compile this grammar against sources, and then it gives you some errors. You can see here we created some examples. In this one, we create one rule which is called link macro rx, which basically, well, it's called insecure URL rule, sorry, but basically what it does is it checks if all the HTTP includes are using HTTPS, and if not, failing. This is the code. And this is what you will do. You will do text link, all the AdDoc files, and if it fails, it will, if there is some URL that is not an HTTP, it will say, in this line, there is an illegal link to an unsecure URL, and it will fail, and you will say, there is an error. This is an improvement that the community are trying to give us. And the final thing that probably nobody here has heard this before is Taurah. And Taurah is a new open source project from OpenDevice, and basically will impact the future of Asciidoctor. And because tons of Asciidoctor of static site generators that are using Asciidoctor are correct, are working, but they are not suited for real big projects. And when I said this, is that Taurah is an open source, a modular Asciidoctor documentation toolchain, and it gives you some kind of workflow for technical writing teams to create, manage, collaborate, and remix and publish documentation sites. And the difference of all the sites or the static site generators is that it came from a variety of versioned content repositories. And this image, I think that summarizes it really well. Unlike most of the static site generators, Taurah does not assume that the content is all in one place. So you have several modules, several Git repo in this case, which can be GitLab or GitHub or even a local directory. They clone everything, and then it says, okay, I'm going to take the branches where the documentation is. Maybe you have 2.0.0, and then you have another branch with 3.0.0, and at that time you just want to create the documentation for the version 2.0.0, not for the 3.0.0. So it's a really good way to maintain the documentation update across all the versions that you release. And finally, it generates the assets and the AsciiDoc pages. And this is done by just using this playbook YAML file, which basically you set where the documentation will live, then the title, and then you can set where is the content. You say the content is in GitHub, the content is in this URL, and I want to generate for these branches, that I want to generate documentation for 2.5, 3.0, and 3.1. And in case of the last example, you said I want to generate for all the versions that have V2 and whatever. And this is, as I said, open source, and you can go to gitlab.com/Taurah, and you can clone the repo and then start using it. We need to, that we live with documentation. We try to always improve documentation. The manual, we received a lot of pull requests improving this documentation with new features, with clarifications, with things that were wrong. And in the future, we want to move this to Taurah, because now this repo contains all the information from Asciidoctor GS, from Maven, from Asciidoctor J. So we have all the documentation in one place. So what we want to do is move this to Taurah. So Asciidoctor J will have its own documentation, Maven plugin its own documentation, Asciidoctor GS its own documentation, and then with Taurah we will bring all together and generate this output. Taurah and Asciidoctor is the future. That both projects are going to work together to improve how you write documentation. Thank you very much. Hope that you enjoyed the new features that are going to improve how you are going to write documentation. If you have any question, we have 1 minute, or I will be here so I can answer it. Anyone? Okay. Well, I'm here if you want. You can come here for any question. Thank you very much.